In today's video, I'm going to talk about the 10 worst purchases that I've made over the course of my career. Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, I'm going to go over the 10 worst purchases that I have made over the course of my career. Now, half of these items, give or take, are going to be for video, and half of them are going to be for photography, because of course I spend a fair amount of my time in each one of these two different realms. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about, and these are in no particular order except for the last one, is something that I bought for video, and that is a 1.2K HMI. Actually, I bought two of them, and they cost me about $2,500 each on eBay, I think, and they were delivered to me on a pallet at a freight warehouse. But the thing is, with these particular lights, is they were gigantic and they consumed a large amount of power. And I got them because I thought that I needed to be able to overpower the sun outdoors while shooting video. It was probably overkill for what I was doing, especially it was probably overkill for doing all of these things all by myself. And so while there probably is a reason to own one of these or the equivalent as an LED, it's probably not something that I should have owned and warehoused in my studio, because it just took up so much power that I never really ended up using it anyway. So number two is also a video purchase, and that is a 12-foot Kessler crane jib. Now, I watched a lot of videos back in the day that were talking about how using a jib could add a lot of production value to your videos. And actually today, instead of using this jib, I would probably just use my drone, because you can very quickly with a drone get a drop-down establishing shot without having to set up this entire rig. And really, that was the problem with this jib. It was so big and it took up so much space in my car, and it took me about 20 to 30 minutes to assemble on location, and probably about that long to pack up, that I didn't end up using it very often. I can remember taking it on location for this video that you're seeing now of this woman running through the park, and the shot looked cool, but then there were other times where I took it to an apparel manufacturer while I was creating a lot of videos, and over the course of 3 days, I had it with me, but I never put it together because it would have just taken up too much time for me to get a single shot that I was looking for. So I ended up just finding a ladder and standing on the top of it, basically. One thing that did come in handy with this jib, though, was that it had about 100 pounds or maybe 70 pounds of counterweights, which came in really handy when the COVID lockdown happened, because all I needed was a 1-inch bar in order to keep working out at home. Number three was this cheap Manfrotto boom, or I should say inexpensive. Back when I was just getting into lighting as a photographer about 20 years ago, I purchased this, and probably the big appealing factor was the fact that you could break it down into like little 2.5 to 3 foot sections and then assemble it on location. And so that seemed quite appealing to me. However, the problem was it just wasn't that sturdy, and in fact, the locking tilt mechanism was just really not that robust and not great for securing the light over the set. In fact, I probably should have just bought like this Avenger 600D that costs vaguely the same amount, and I would have been a lot happier. In fact, I own two of these Avenger 600Ds today, as well as another boom. And the good thing about more expensive grip equipment in general, and well-made grip equipment, is that you only have to buy it once, usually the course of your career, and it will definitely last forever. Number four is a Mamiya RB67. This, in fact, was the last film camera that I used, and it was during that period of time where people were transitioning from film to digital, but I thought that it would be a great idea if I used my digital camera at the time, a Canon D30, which was 3 megapixels. If I used that camera as sort of a Polaroid, so I would use it on my test shots and get the exact lighting and frame that I wanted, and then I would pull out the giant RB67 and use it on the set. In fact, I used my friend's RB67 lately as a prop in a photo shoot, and it was just sort of cool to see. But the idea was that I was going to use the RB67 to shoot film on portraits, and the truth was, I just never really did it. I thought that it would be a great idea, but when push came to shove, I didn't really want to be bothered with shooting film, taking it to the lab, getting it developed, and then scanning it when I could just use the digital camera image and no client would say anything about it. So I probably only shot like 10 rolls of film with this camera, and because of my timing, which was really poor, the bottom fell out of the medium format film market, and I ended up losing $1,000 or $2,000 on the entire setup. Before we move on, I just wanted to say that if you enjoy learning from me in these videos, you probably would also enjoy reading my 2 lighting handbooks. Volume 2, which just came out, has 23 different one light setups, and Volume 1 breaks down 20 different multiple light setups. In each of these digital downloads, you'll find behind the scenes photos, diagrams, and the final images, as well as a full breakdown of how I got the images. That way you'll be able to use it as inspiration or recreate the exact photos on set during your next photo shoot. And in addition to that, you'll get my Intro to Lighting Guide free. This 31-page digital download goes over all of the fundamentals of lighting. That way you'll have everything you need to get started in the studio. So for more information and to get your copy today, just go to johngress.com/lightinghandbooks. So number 5 was also a bad photography purchase, and that was buying a Leica M4P. Back when I was a young photojournalist, probably around 19 or 20, I had this very romanticized view about my profession, and I felt that I needed to own a camera like this because a lot of the idols that I looked up to, like Henri Cartier-Bresson, used them, and so I thought that this was something that I needed in order to get to the next level. Of course, I bought the camera and it just became very impractical. One, because I wasn't that well adept at manual focus. Autofocus had just sort of come up at the time. In fact, the older photographers referred to people like me as autofocus babies because we did not know how to hand focus. And so one, I didn't have the confidence of using the manual focus. I probably would have been fine with it over time though. The other thing though was that a lot of times on photojournalism jobs, we'd be trying to shoot 2 rolls of film, and the reason is that we'd be putting that into a film processor where you could run 2 rolls at a time. Or maybe you'd be processing the film by hand, and you'd also be trying to limit how much you shot because there was only so much room in the tank to develop the film. And the last thing you wanted to do in either instance was run another batch through the processor or have to run another batch manually, because that was just going to slow you down, and everything is about speed and getting it out for the newspapers to use. So a lot of times using the Leica was just not that practical, and so I didn't end up using it very much, and so then I ended up selling it, of course, at a loss. Number 6 was a video purchase. I ended up picking up this Redrock Micro iSpy 2.0, I think, in order to have a shoulder rig for my camera. And it had a follow focus. I was using the 5D Mark II at the time, and this was during this revolutionary period where all of a sudden the doors had been flung open for video because photographers like me could use our photo cameras and shoot high quality, for the time, HD video in this little small package. And so having a rig like this, according to all the blogs, was really essential. The bad thing though was I think it cost me around $1,600, and within a short period of time, all of these manufacturers selling on eBay from China and India were making the equivalent for maybe $300 or $400. So here it was that I had this giant expensive thing that almost automatically overnight was not worth what I paid for it. And while I have used some parts from that kit over time repeatedly, particularly the follow focus, I can't say that it was a good purchase. I would have been way better off just waiting for the generic version from eBay. So this next one was also a photography purchase, and guess what? I made the same mistake twice. I bought another Leica M4P because I guess I didn't learn enough of a lesson the first time. And this was probably when I was 21 or 22 or so. I thought, oh, well, I must have made a mistake back in the day. I didn't really know enough about what I was doing, and these other photographers, I see them using them like Noctway and Turnley. I think that's right. And so I thought, okay, well, I need to get one too, because these high-end photojournalists that I aspire to be, they're using them, or at least I thought they were using them. And so once again, I made the purchase. I shouldn't have done it. It was still inconvenient, and it was just a bad overall idea. So number 8 was also a video purchase. I picked up these cool lights back in the day to use for my video shoots. And it was probably the first so-called professional video lights that I had. Back before that, I was probably using some DIY approach, using CFLs and an umbrella or something. But these lights were supposed to be not hot, cool lights, and they were supposed to be affordable. I'm not even sure what the technology was, because it wasn't HMI and it wasn't LED. It was some weird thing there in the middle. The problem with these lights is that it was hard, at least for me, to adapt them to a softbox. And on top of that, they weren't very bright in the first place. And so it wasn't like they output enough light. They also were slightly green, and they just weren't a good, well-made product overall. I would have been way better off buying something that was just a little bit more expensive, let's say from KinoFlow or Ari at the time, something that would have provided professional results. I could have got those things on eBay. It might have been slightly more expensive, but instead I decided to cut a corner, and I definitely paid for it. So number 9 was this Flex Track from Kessler crane. I had it in my head after watching a few demo videos on YouTube, I'm sure you know how that goes, that I needed to own this piece of equipment because it would provide me with a solution to something that I'd wanted, which was sort of these tracking shots where the camera moved around the person, and I'd be able to get really great production value by just sort of moving around the subject. In fact, I used it on this particular hair shoot, and I don't even think the results that I got were any better than using a slider. The problem with this flex hose system was that the two hoses were never really that parallel. I would try to get them a certain distance apart by using a pipe or something like that to get them to lay there, but they never laid exactly right. And so you'd be moving along the track and your camera would sort of make this wobbling move, or all of a sudden it would jump because you'd hit a flat spot or a hard turn or something like that. And so even though it seemed like a great idea, it was just a waste of time and money, and something that I couldn't be happier to get rid of in the end. So number 10 is actually something that I haven't bought yet. I know in the future that I'm going to convince myself that I need to buy something to solve some problem. So much of the time, we as photographers or videographers, content creators if you will, get it in our heads that we need a particular piece of gear in order to get our work to the next level. Sometimes that is true, but most of the time what's going to get you from A to B is just practice. Putting in a little time, coming up with a better idea, working it out on set, and working it out in post. That process is how we learn and how we improve. Buying something new is not necessarily going to get us from A to B. I know that I'm going to make this mistake again in the future, but hopefully I'm going to make it a little bit less. Just know that we all make mistakes and we all learn from those mistakes. And hopefully I've made enough of them so I won't make as many of them in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.